Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. God has given us unlimited treasures in His Word. Every time we open it, we can discover a new treasure or admire an old one. What will we find today? Let's dig in. Here's Carla Early with Treasure Hunt in the Word.
Have you ever wept until you didn't have any more tears? Anguished, heart-wrenching weeping because of a hurt that went so deep into your soul. David experienced this in 1 Samuel 30. He and his men returned from a battle to find that the Amalekites had burned their homes and taken all their families captive. Not only this, but David's men talked about stoning him. He was their leader, so they blamed him. Instead of staying home to protect their families, they'd been off trying to fight someone else's war. David had messed up. Have you ever been there? That makes it even worse when that heart-wrenching, deep soul pain seems to be your own fault. It makes you just want to sit down and give up, doesn't it? So what did David, the man after God's own heart, do? In 1 Samuel 30, verses 6 and 8, it tells David's plight and then says, "But David encouraged himself in the Lord his God. And he inquired of the Lord, saying, Shall I pursue them?" David looked at his circumstances. Then he looked at God. At this point, David didn't have most of what we consider the Bible today. He would have only had maybe the first 5 books, and maybe Joshua and Judges. Or he might not have had any at all, considering all of his possessions at home had been either destroyed or pillaged by the Amalekites. They most likely didn't have a pocket-sized Torah scroll at the time. Their scrolls are pretty unwieldy. But he had grown up with stories of what God had done for Israel in the past, and he'd experienced God in his own life. He knew who God was, his rock, his fortress, his strong tower, his strength and shield. Maybe he quoted some of his own poetry that would later become the book of Psalms to give himself strength and hope. Maybe he even composed a new poem to remind himself who God was and what he could do. There are several that start out with the fear of man and what's going on around him and end in praise and trust. Knowing who God is and what he can do will make us courageous and bold. During this time of shock and sorrow, David turned to his God and clung to him for dear life. David was weak and defenseless, but his God was not. So first, he strengthened himself in the Lord. We can do that too when we hit a rough spot in our lives, even if it's the soul-wrenching, weeping all night kind of trouble. We can remember who the Lord is, what He's done in the Bible, how powerful He is, and what He's done personally for us in our own past. That will give us strength to face whatever is directly in our path, knowing that God is right by our side and in control of every step of the way. Then David asked God what he should do next. He didn't try to get anything done on his own. He'd messed things up before, and he didn't want that now, especially with the lives of his family and the families of his men at stake. He wanted to do things right this time. He wanted to do things God's way. So he asked the Lord, and God sent him and his men to pursue and successfully bring back their families and recover all that had been carried away, down to the last sheep and goat. So when we encounter these types of soul-shaking problems in our lives, we should train ourselves to remember who God is and ask Him to lead us in that next step.
You can contact us at treasurehuntintheword@gmail.com. We'd love to hear the treasures God has given you through His Word. You can listen to other episodes at our website, which you can find in the description below. Thanks for listening, and remember, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also.